Samiran Gupta, Head of India ICANN, to tell us a bit about what ICANN is and what are the important themes or internet governance issues that ICANN is working on. Samiran,
Thank
over
you,
to you.
Prateek. Thank you, Prateek. And I hope you can hear me clearly. Uh, but before I
Yes, we
get
can.
started, thank you. And before we get started, I first want to do a couple of things simultaneously. Thank and congratulate Prateek and my friends at the Mumbai chapter of ISOC for for firstly doing so much work on the ground that I keep seeing online, but also for inviting me for this call. I'm really grateful that you all thought it fit to have someone from ICANN speak, and I'm very happy to be here today. So the way I'd like to do this is my presentation is in possibly three segments. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to pause after the first segment. So if anyone has questions on what I've already spoken on, we can kind of revisit that and then continue from there. And at the end, I'd like to leave some time for more Q&A so that we can have a conversation. While I'm speaking, if you have a question, if you could kindly hold it till the end of the segment, I would appreciate that so that we can complete a segment at a time. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off while I'm speaking, and I'll see you again when we are having the conversation. So let me get started here. The topic that Prateek proposed was internet governance in the APAC region and the role of ICANN. And so let's start by looking at the APAC region first and the dynamics of this region. So what you can see from the slide is that there are about 2 billion internet users in the APAC region, which means there's a penetration of roughly 48%. These are numbers from last year, 2018. I'm sure it's been rising since then. But what is also clear is that it's a very large region with a lot of people coming online very quickly. I'd like to also share with you the sort of the economic impact that the internet has across the world. But if you look at Asia Pacific, which is shown on the right-hand side, you will see that the mobile phone industry has contributed about $1.1 trillion to the APAC economy in 2014. These are numbers from 5 years ago, but just an indication of what those numbers are like. And then at the base of the slide, you will see I've added some more information because there was a study done by a economic and trade think tank called ICRIER in India in 2016. And the study, the hyperlink is provided. You can go and see that a 10% increase in internet subscribers in India results in an increase of 2.4% in the growth of state per capita GDP in India. So all the details of the study is there. But the point I'm trying to make over here is whether it's India, whether it's elsewhere in the APAC region, the internet has had a very powerful impact on economies, on how people live their lives, and therefore, we all of us who are in this region, in a sense, have a shared responsibility in making sure that the internet is administered, managed in the right possible manner. So I'm going to move to what ICANN does, and uh, many of you on the call know about ICANN. I saw some familiar names on the list of attendees, but but I'd like to take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about what ICANN does uh, for the next few slides. And after this segment, I'm going to stop for some questions. So what we do is, this is a very simple kind of uh, explanation of what ICANN does, but on the slide you see three vertical columns: protocol parameters, names, and numbers. And essentially, these are what we call the unique identifiers of the internet, or another way of saying is the domain name system of the internet. So coordinating with our partners, we help make the internet work. I mean, this is a very simple definition, but what we are really talking about is coordinating the unique identifiers of the internet. And who are our partners? So we have technical partners such as the IETF, the various regional internet, you know, uh, registries. Okay, you see ARIN there, you see LACNIC there. We also work with Worldwide Web Consortium, IEEE, the various root server operators. So these are the technical partners that we work with. But there's another part of ICANN which many of you know about, which is around policymaking related to some of the issues, or all the issues related to the unique identifiers. And for that, we work with some of these organizations that you see on the screen over here. So these are, for example, you see the messaging, malware, and Mobile Anti-Abuse Working Group. You see the OECD, the United Nations, IGF, World Intellectual Property Organization, so on and so forth. Okay, and of course, ISOC. So essentially, our role is that of coordination of both, on the one hand, the technology that underpins the internet and the policies that run that technology that underpin the internet. And if we were to look more some more detail on exactly what ICANN does, this slide has these various boxes. But if you look at the bottom right-hand side, you're going to see the three boxes which are in red, as opposed to the other boxes being in blue. These are the core functions, or these are called the uh, Internet Assigned Name Authority functions, or IANA functions, which includes the IP addresses, root zone management, and protocol parameters, which is the core of what we do. And then there are other things which are also on the slide, such as policy development, running one of the root servers. We don't call it the L root anymore. This is an older slide. We call it the ICANN managed root instance, or root server. We work with the community. We support them to grow their engagement, and we work with the generic DLDs. We also delegates the top level domain with identified with country codes, and we also, of course, work on policy development. So this slide sort of gives you a fair idea of what you know uh, what is it that ICANN does. But the bottom right corner, where the three red boxes are, is absolutely the core of our activities. The ICANN ecosystem, as many of you will already know, is really made up of three components, with the community leading the process. Out of the community comes members of the board, And then the third leg of this, three-way equation is ICANN organization. I work for the ICANN organization. What is important over here is to understand that the role of the community is to, and there's certain parts of the community, we'll get to that slide very soon, which makes policies. It's for the board to ratify the policies, and it's for the organizations to help the community make the policies and then to administer the same. So the roles are very, very clearly demarcated over here. So in this slide, what I have is the two sides of this ICANN multi-stakeholder community. On the one side is the supporting organizations, and on the other side are the advisory committees. So the supporting organizations are where policy is developed. So that's where new policy is originated, but then it goes into the realm of the advisory committees who give their comments on it, and there are cross-community consultations before the policy is ratified, and then it even goes to the public for comments. And finally, a policy initiative can be closed out when it goes to the board for final sort of ratification. There's another slide which I'm not showing, but which shows that whole process step by step. But the fact is, broadly, the message I'm trying to convey over here is that it's the supporting organizations which make the policies and the advisory committee which comment on them. And the supporting organizations are the address supporting organization, or the ASO, the CCNSO, or the country code names supporting organizations, and the GNSO, which is the generic name supporting organization. Now, within the GNSO, there is the contracted and non-contracted parties, and then, of course, in the non-contracted parties, there's further bifurcation with the business community, the IP community, and also the nonprofit organizations. In the advisory side, you have the at-large advisory committee, the governmental advisory committee, and the two technical groups, which are the root server systems advisory committee and the security and stability advisory committee. So it's a fairly complex process when you need to get some policy ratified, and we need to bring everybody on the same page and get consensus to make policy happen. So I'm going to stop here and turn back my camera. If anybody has questions on this segment that we just spoke about, I'll be very happy to take them now. Prateek?
I think you have been very elaborate and articulate, and that's why I'm not seeing any hands being raised here. So,
all right.
I think we'll move on to the next.
All right.
We'll move on to the next segment, wherein
Sure.
it would be great if you can highlight a bit about what are the ICANN activities which are being done in APAC region, and how can members, if they're interested, can participate in these activities.
Right. So I'm going to hold the segment on the activities in the APAC region for the third part. Before we get there, I wanted to talk about some of the couple of key initiatives which are ongoing at this time, and and therefore,
yes.
When we talk about the APAC region, all of that comes together.
Yes, I think that would also be great. If you can talk about some of our existing initiatives, and then you can
Right.
probably
And then
extend
I'll get
to
into
how
the
people
APAC.
can engage.
Yeah.
Yes, no
Okay.
problem.
All right. So moving on, let me do this. Yeah. So there are two things that I wanted to particularly cover. One is internationalized domain names, and the second is universal acceptance. And many of you, or most of you, I would imagine, would have heard of these two. Uh, so, what are internationalized domain names? It's essentially uh, domain names which are not in ASCII or what we call the English characters. It is in characters which are non-ASCII. So it could be, for example, in the Devanagari script. It could be in Sinhala. It could be in Bangla. It could be in Arabic, so on and so forth. So this is one major initiative where we are trying to bring much more choice and variety while keeping the domain name system working exactly the way it does, uh, and get it in the different scripts. The second part, universal acceptance, is about when you have an a domain name, let's say, even if it's an ASCII, but it is, let's say, 9 characters long. So it's longer than the typical 2 or 3 character top level domain. Or if you have, domain names which are not in ASCII, sometimes some services have challenges in accepting or displaying or saving or sort of manipulating these characters, and it's a challenge which is being addressed. So I'm going to talk about these two things mostly in the next segment, in the coming segment. So let's start with the expansion of the generic top level domains. Uh, Before 2012, or let's put it this way, leading up to 2012, there were 22 top level domains, such as a .com, .aero, you know, .org, .mil, and so on and so forth. But since that time, since 2012, we've got over 1,200 top-level domains. Okay. Now, this expansion is known as the expansion of the GTLD space, and now we have brands, we have cities such as .paris. You have a brand. If you're in India, you've heard of .geo, the telecom provider. Uh, we have professions such as football or accountant, so on and so forth. Now, what I'm going to do is, uh, while this is all very good, uh, it really has a huge impact on what ICANN does, what is ICANN's key role. So I'm just going to go quickly back to one of the slides we saw earlier, and it's this one over here. So essentially, if you look at this slide and if you look at the 3 red boxes at the bottom right, those 3 boxes, IP addresses or root zone management, protocol parameters, these also, the biggest issue around these subjects is that ICANN's key role is to maintain the security, stability, and resiliency of the root zone of the internet. Okay. In other words, now when we go to what I was talking about, you have these 1,200 plus extensions at the top level. That root zone, which is a database, has grown many times from 22 to 1,200, and it's going to grow. It may continue to grow further. And ICANN's role is, the challenges of maintaining security and stability just keeps going up, and that's where we focus mostly on. Okay, but this is where the expansion has come to. And there was one round of this expansion, and we are waiting uh, for the community to work together, and which they're doing, to figure out when the next round is going to be, and it's called the subsequent procedures. Okay, so this was about the expansion of the GTLDs. The next thing is what I had mentioned earlier, is bringing internationalized domain names in the top level of the internet's addressing system. So just the way you've got .org, .com, .uk, you now have .arab, .china, .rf, and also .bharat and Devanagari, which got delegated in 2014. So, so again, if you add these, and there are several others, I've just shown you a few. This process started in 2009, and we have at ICANN, we've got part of the GDD team, or the Global Domains Division, is this whole program, which actually helps communities from different countries develop their own IDN. So in India, or in the Indian subcontinent, we had the New Brahmi Generation Panel, which has almost concluded its work with about 9 scripts, and we've worked with community from Nepal, from Bangladesh, and even worked in collaboration with communities from Sri Lanka to look at the 9 index scripts, and look at the rule sets, to bring them onto the top level of the DNS. And 8 of those 9 scripts are at this time being integrated, which means that they're actually in the process of getting into the root zone of the internet, so that next time when there is an expansion of generic top-level domains, someone from the region could ask for a TLD in a local script. Okay, so and one is remaining, which is Bangla, and we're hoping that in the next year or so that will also get delegated. But so the expansion of the GTLD space and the coming of IDNs have been the 2 big developments that have taken place between particularly 2009, when the IDN started, and from 2012, when the new GTLD program started. Now, why do we need internationalized domain names? You can see on this slide that how the profile of internet users has changed dramatically between 2000 and 2016. By 2016, China and India sort of replaced Japan and Germany in a sense, and also the United States, for all practical purposes, as the top 2 nations in terms of internet use. And that trend continues, and there are many other countries in the APAC region, such as Bangladesh or Indonesia in particular, who are still growing at a very rapid pace of internet adoption. So essentially, IDNs allow people around the world to access domain names in their own languages. And of course, more and more people around the world can get online because of IDNs. Now, the challenge that we are facing is as we bring in more IDNs, or as we even bring in more GTLDs, the challenge is that, you know, all these domain names, or at the top level, may not display the same way, or, you know, uh, essentially all domain names should be treated equally. So it should not be that, oh, because you have a Chinese or a Japanese domain name, that some systems should not be able to read it. Uh, and we have to always remember the internet is a network of networks, and this is where you know, we need to work together to ensure that all scripts can be read equally and accessed equally. So this process is called universal acceptance, and it includes new GTLDs, it includes internationalized email addresses, and it includes internationalized domain names. And what are the principles of universal acceptance? So there are broadly 5 things. Uh, you know, the when you see a when you see when you receive an email which is coming from a non-ASCII script, your system should be able to accept it, validate it, store it, and be able to process and display it. Now, these are the very 5 fundamental principles, and you know, one needs to be able to score or tick off on all of these 5. Now, the issue over here is it may sound quite simple that, okay, if I fix certain elements of my network or certain portions of my network, I should be able to do all these things. But the fact is, it doesn't necessarily work that way. Because there are many parties who are part of your system who may or may not be validating. Okay, and I'll give you an example, and this is actually coming out of the the ICANN 64 public meeting held in Kobe in the month of March, last month, that is, in Japan. And ICANN.org, my colleague Ashwin Rangan, who sort of heads IT services at ICANN, actually gave an update on how UA ready ICANN itself was. And we are on the path, but it's taking us a fair bit of time to get everything UA ready, because we have a lot of vendors. For example, when you send me an email, it actually goes through a filter. That filter, a spam filter. That spam filter does not belong to ICANN, does not belong to Microsoft, although we use Exchange and Outlook, but it belongs to a third party. And until we get that party, sort of to agree to UA readiness, the whole chain is not complete. So therefore, it's a process that is going to take some time across the world to be able to achieve, and to make this universal acceptance take place. There is a group called the Universal Acceptance Steering Group. UASG.tech is where you can find them, and they have a lot of material, and they're doing a fair bit of outreach globally to help companies and organizations get UA ready. Now, what are the economic benefits of a UA, universal acceptance of IDNs and GTLDs? So the UASG had commissioned a white paper by Analysis Mason in April 2017. And essentially what the white paper says, that if you look at the missed opportunities of revenues, it's almost $10 billion. When I personally read this report, and it would make me wonder, So how does it really play out on the ground? And to my amazement, I actually learned of it firsthand a couple of weeks ago when I was present at a universal acceptance hackathon that we were conducting in the state of Kerala in India, in a city called Kozhikode. So I met this ERP developer who has created a enterprise resource management application, which he supports small businesses with. And his market is actually the GCC or the Gulf Cooperation Council nations, such as United Arab Emirates or Bahrain and others. And he and I were talking, and I asked him that how do you, so if I use your app, how do you validate my access to the application? So he said it's very simple. You need to sign in with your email ID. And then I asked him that does your system accept an Arabic email ID? And he actually looked at me and he said, no, but I didn't even know there are Arabic email IDs. But the fact is there are. So this for him was a signal to be UA ready so that he can get more business, because he is serving the Arabic speaking market. And he's actually missing out on those companies which may not necessarily only use ASCII email IDs, but also use IDNs. So this is just a first-hand example that I encountered myself. I thought I should share this with you. So again, let me take a quick break over here. And if you have any questions on the previous segment that I spoke on, I'll be very happy to take them.
Samiran, if you can see, there are a few questions in the chat box.
Okay,
and we also have one hand from Dr. Govind as well. So Dr. Govind, would you like to raise a question?
Dr. Govind, please go ahead.
Dr.
So I don't get to see, I'm not being able to see the chat box. So if you can just
yes.
read out the questions from there, let's get started with that.
Yes,
and
yes.
Once Dr. Govind can join.
So I'll just have a look at the chat box and read out a few questions from there. Dr. Govind, are you online? Not been able to see him. Okay, so I think the first. So I'll just read. There are two comments.
Sure.
So there is a comment by Maureen about, you have given a very good description of ICANN and what it does. Then Sherry has asked a question wherein she wants to know a bit more about the collaboration between ICANN and ISOC, and she has asked us to feel free that we can cover it in the later part if it is going to be introduced there. So that's one question.
Right.
And Umesh is asking about that you had mentioned about security in the domain name system. So apart from NBGP and apart from universal acceptability, does ICANN also work on monitoring fake domain names and URLs? So that's his question.
Okay, so let's do this. Let me take the question on security first, and then let's hold the question on the ICANN ISOC collaboration, which we will cover when we get to the next segment. Is that okay?
Dr. Govind has also written down his question. I'll just read it out.
Sure.
I think so. So his question is, how have you arrived at the figures? So for example, you have mentioned 3.2 billion, 3.2 billion users. You have mentioned revenue of $10 billion. So how have you arrived at those figures?
Sure.
That's what you want.
So let's start with Dr. Govind's question then, and I'm working this backwards. We'll do Dr. Govind's questions first, move to security, and then we'll hold the ICANN ISOC collaboration question for the next segment. Yeah.
And Samiran, if you can just take one question from us, is if you can just
Sure.
give a short description about the .amazon domain controversy.
Can we do that
.amazon
right at the
controversy.
end?
Yeah, no
Can we
problem.
do that right at the end?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So let's start with Dr. Govind's question about the analysis Mason study. Dr. Govind, if you download this the study, you will find the methodology of how they've worked this. Uh, so essentially, there are two parts to this. One is as you can see, it's the existing users and the new users. Okay. So when you have existing users, let's look at a very large bank in India, without naming any names, and let us say that hypothetically we are in a situation where this bank serves hundreds and thousands of people, and then IDNs have become start picking up, and they start using IDN emails, and somebody's trying to connect with customer service by email using an IDN email ID, and is unable to get through. Okay, so this is one example of existing users who are unable, or rather a company which has existing users, which is unable to service those users because of, let's say, an email which is not on ASCII. So this is one side, and the other side is, if you look at new internet users coming online through IDNs, while that number may not be very high currently, it's going to start growing very rapidly. And the good thing, though, is that as new applications get developed to service new users, uh, it's a good place to start with universal acceptance, or to code for universal acceptance, to make sure that these applications, from the time they get to your phone, from the time they get to your laptop, they are already UA configured. So, so let me just stop here. There's more detail in the in the research paper, and let me also say that let's say Microsoft is UA ready, Google is UA ready, Apple is getting there. Okay, so everybody is recognizing the fact that the internet is going to start looking fairly different into the future. So I'll stop here in my answer to Dr. Govind's question. Pratik, can you just repeat the question on security once more, please?
Yes. So when you talk about universal acceptability, we believe that we have to accept all kinds of domain names. But in
Mm-hmm.
such instances, how do you monitor something like a fake domain name or a fake URL? So
So,
how do we ensure? How do we
so
balance this
let
trade-off?
me see if I've understood the question correctly. So when a domain name is created, uh, there is an IP address that is allocated to that domain name, and a registrar, is involved, and a registry is involved. Okay, so you cannot have a domain name which does not stay in any registry. Okay, so I'm not sure how you're going to get a fake domain name at the top level. Uh, so I'm not very clear what exactly this question is. Okay.
Hello. Hi,
Yeah.
hi, Samiran. This is Umesh here.
Hi, Umesh.
So we get an instruction from bank whenever we go to the URL, to
Mm-hmm.
check the URL, and the URL says, for example, I'm just putting on rank ICICI.com. So that URL has a unique URL name.
Right.
And okay, so if you there are some fake URL which comes in the market, and obviously that URL comes with
Oh,
a
you
domain
mean, yeah, yeah.
name.
Okay, the URL is the entire string is fake, you're saying,
Uh,
from second, third, whichever level.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so how so it does the you mentioned security? So does that come into your purview of security and then policy making towards that?
All right. Now, so let's talk about the security side, and then we'll talk separately about the policy side. And I'm mindful of the fact that we are almost, 15 minutes into the hour. So on the security side, ICANN's focus is mainly on the DNS system and how it works. And if we had a little more time, I would have put up a slide showing you how actually the DNS works. Many of you probably know that. Some of you might not. But essentially, our role is to keep the what we call the root zone file of the internet secure, because that is everything that sits right of the dot. So that file, the security of that file is what we are concerned most about. Okay. Now, when you talk about policies around fake URLs, there are many forums where that discussion may take place. Some of it might happen at ICANN, some of it may take place elsewhere at some of the regional internet registries as well. So I don't know if I've been able to answer your question a little better here, but I think I'd like to move on now and complete the rest of my my talk. And then if you have time, we can talk further. And even beyond that, I'm very happy to take questions online later, or rather offline later. Okay. So moving on, ICANN in the APAC region. So ICANN's focus globally, or rather ICANN's focus on globalization started mostly from 2013. It's not that before 2013 there was no global activity, but it was very clear that the growth and the velocity of markets were moving towards the Asia Pacific region, towards Africa, and therefore ICANN started globalizing in a very conscious manner from 2013. And today, in this last segment, I'm going to talk about the APAC region in particular. So essentially, what is our global presence? This map shows you where we are globally. In Asia, we have an engagement center in Beijing. We have a partnership center in Seoul. And of course, we have a regional office in Singapore. And the whole idea is to use the regional offices that you can see on the screen to kind of work with the stakeholders of the region and support them in every way possible. Now, in the APAC region, we've been present for 5 years. We completed 5 years last year, and last August. And here are some of the numbers of what we've done in the space. For example, if you look at the top right, you'll see that we've done 25 law enforcement trainings, 25 trainings for law enforcement agencies, covering roughly 1,000 people. We've done 87 technical workshops. There are 25 ICANN managed root instances in this region. And then, of course, there are 7 generation panels, one of which I spoke about, which was the new Grammy generation panel, which in itself covers 9 scripts. we are doing something called APIGA, or the Asia Pacific Internet Governance Academy, which takes place in Seoul, Korea, every year. 3 years have gone past. The fourth year will be this year. And of course, our most important, kind of most prominent rather, engagement process is called APAC Space. These are web conferences that we do, multiple times a year, and at the ICANN meetings, they're done live as and when possible. So the role of ICANN Asia Pacific is to support community, and this is where the engagement with ISOC also comes in, because, for example, in a country like India, it actually makes my work in India more effective when we have active ISOC chapters in the country, and therefore we can actually collaborate much closely. But ISOC and I can also collaborate with technical sort of seminars, or even at APIGA, for example. So generally, we work closely together as on a very regular basis, not only in the APAC region, but also across the world. So I'm going to talk about some of the key outreach programs that we have, and our focus is obviously to be of service to the community, particularly in internet governance issues, and mostly and for, of course, issues related to ICANN. Essentially, what we are trying to do with our outreach is to develop sustainable stakeholder relationships. So today, as a matter of fact, although I'm based in New Delhi, today, Saturday, 27th April, I'm actually sitting in a city called Amritsar, where a domain name conference is taking place. And I'm going to be speaking there this afternoon. And this is in the APAC region as well. But our role is to support these activities, as and when required. The APAC space is again we call it, like, we characterize it as a practice ground for the APAC community to talk about policy, to have those conversations before they take them to the world stage, share their insights and updates before going to the world stage. And it's sort of an ongoing process. And if you are not on the mailing list, please write to any of these email IDs that you have, particularly the one below, which says subscribe at apacspace.asia, and get yourself added. And then you can join the space and the discussions as well. We also do community-led ICANN readout sessions. So for every ICANN public meeting that takes place, we like to have the community that attended those meetings to actually talk about some of the highlights of that meeting. And it is understandable that ICANN meetings can be quite exhausting and very wide in scope, because there are many issues being discussed. But at the end of the day, if you're in China, if you're in Thailand, if you're in India, if you're in Singapore, any of the APAC region countries, there may be 3 or 4 issues which are the key issues for your marketplace, and you may want to talk about what happened at the last ICANN meeting. And this is what we encourage at all the locations or all the countries in this region. And then, of course, I had already mentioned about the APIGA, the Asia Pacific Internet Governance Academy, which is in collaboration with the Korea Internet and Security Agency, or KISA, and other regional organizations. And the whole idea is to do this once a year, and then have those who attend this academy to actually work more closely in their communities and keep these conversations going regionally as well as locally. And then apart from APICA, of course, if there are Internet School of Governance happening in specific countries in the APAC region, we are happy to support those. For example, there is INSIG that takes place in India, and we've sort of partnered with ISOC on those programs, the School of Governance program. So these are some of the initiatives that ICANN has in the region. Separately, and this is a very important part, we were talking mostly about policy thus far, but on the pure technical side, we support a lot of the training around DNS security, DNS security extension deployment, or DNSSEC deployment, root server instance deployment. All of this in this region is something that we also do. Again, as you can see at the top of the slide, the focus is on secure, stable, and resilient internet, or SSR, particularly related to the top level of the DNS. So these are the key things that we do. Since we have just 5 minutes, I'll just quickly wrap this up over here. If you wanted to get involved, if you're not already involved with ICANN activities, if you want to, there are various ways you can do this. This slide gives you this information, and I hope Prateek will, this deck will be available.
Yes.
Thank you, Prateek. And so, and of course, following up from this conversation, if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to take them, offline as well. But this slide shows you how you can get involved. And there are programs such as fellowships, next gen, and newcomer programs, which actually help you immerse into the ICANN policymaking process, and then start working with the community. And lastly, I'd like to tell you our very next upcoming meeting is 6th to 9th May, the GDD Industry Summit, which is taking place in the region in Bangkok. And this is mainly for the registries and registrars contracted with ICANN, but also happening in parallel or subsequently is the ICANN DNS Symposium, which is more about the the technical underpinnings of the DNS system and the DNS OARC. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation, and we can possibly take a few more questions again.
Yes, Samiran, thank you for your presentation. On popular request, we are extending the conversation by 10 minutes, if you don't mind.
Okay. All
so
right.
We'll just cover a few questions and have
Sure.
a discussion. I'll just read out the questions and the person who has asked them. In case if the person wants to ask it himself, he can unmute himself and ask it, him or her, and otherwise, I can ask the question for the
Sure.
concerned person. So I'm just having a look at the chats, and a few comments here. Maureen has asked for a link to the report, which you had stated.
Sure.
which mentioned
Analysis
the numbers.
analysis
Yes.
means, yeah,
So we
yeah,
will get a link from you and share it with her.
yeah.
Amrita
You
has
can
a
share it with
question.
everybody. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll share with everybody. Amrita
yeah.
has a question. Amrita, would you like to unmute yourself and ask it, or should I ask it for you? Amrita, are you online? Okay, so
I would just
I'll ask.
read the question.
Yes, I'll read the question for Amrita. Uh, so the question she has two questions.
Mm-hmm,
One is, Samiran, what do you see are the main challenges in
mm-hmm.
proliferation and adoption of IDNs in India, and how
Right.
does ICANN plan to improve the situation? That's one.
Mm-hmm,
And second is that most of the new utilities in India are right now being taken for business reasons like, say, IP protection.
mm-hmm,
How is ICANN planning to create an awareness of, how specifically, apart from, trademark protection, are there any other ways
mm-hmm,
in which, say, a GTID can help a business?
mm-hmm.
So these are our two questions. Would you like
Okay.
to take a few more questions, or would you like to answer them and then I'll ask you the remaining?
Let me just. Why don't you give me a couple more questions as well? I'm making a
Okay,
note of.
great.
Yeah.
Mhm. I don't see any more questions as of now.
Okay.
Subhashish,
All right.
do you have any questions? Do you think there are any other questions which I'm missing on the chat, which you would like to point out?
No, not really. I see three questions from Amrita and a comment and a question from Dr. Govind. I think that's answered. And then you asked about the .Amazon controversy.
Yeah.
That's another question to be
Yes.
answered.
Thanks.
Yes. Yes. Indeed. Okay. So let me start with Amrita's question about the IDN ecosystem. It's interesting. Like most things on the internet, there is no one entity that can fulfill all sort of issues to make something successful. So again, we need to work together. But let's look at the IDN internet, rather the IDN ecosystem. So let's map what does it take to reach an internationalized domain name. It actually starts from your keyboard. So if you don't have access to a keyboard that types in multiple scripts, you're unable to reach an internationalized domain name. Now, the alternative to this is, of course, voice, but there's still a fair bit of work still happening on the voice side. But I must add that as far as India is concerned, the government of India has implemented this statute, maybe I think 3 or perhaps 4 years ago, that any cell phone sold in India should have the availability of at least 2 separate scripts to be used on the keyboard. So that is one part. Then the second part is, do we have enough content available? Is there enough content available in local scripts? So the question then becomes, it's a two-part question, that if we have content, is that content taggable? In other words, can a search engine go and tag that content? Some of you may be aware that Google is currently doing a project where they've actually got some AI going, which is actually taking a lot of the non-Unicode content and converting it to Unicode so that it can be tagged. Unicode is the sort of the language which is similar, which is an alternative to ASCII when you're and used particularly for the local script. So the point I'm getting at is there are many components over here. ICANN's role in this whole ecosystem is to make sure that at the top level of the DNS, you can, read, write, and accept or create names in local scripts, and there's a fair bit of progress that has happened. I think the message I'm trying to convey over here is that none of this is going to happen in a snap. It's going to happen gradually as all these different players in the ecosystem kind of do their little bit. Okay, this is one. Second thing I believe that Amrita asked about was the awareness of IDNs and before the next round of a new GTLD. I think and Amrita, I would imagine you would know that there is a fair bit of conversation going on around what kind of awareness is required for new entrants to come in and kind of invest in a new GTLD, which could be an idea in itself. While those plans have not been entirely finalized, but you're probably going to see a much more concentrated effort this time around letting people know what new GTLDs are and how they can be used, and should they only be used for brand protection, or can they be used for let's say professional purposes. I know of a startup in India. It's called Now Floats, and they are looking at bringing a lot of people online from smaller cities and towns of India and help them with branding their businesses using new GTLDs, the professional ones such as .accountant or .doctors, so on and so forth. But that's a separate conversation. But and that is happening. that effort is sort of organic in a sense. So I'll just stop here, and we can move to another question.
Samiran, there are two questions remaining. One is my question on a bit about .Amazon controversy.
Amazon. I'm still holding that for the very last.
Okay, sure. And the other question is by
what else is
Anupam has raised, a very interesting question that what should be the approach of regulation towards internet? Essentially, should the government play a critical role in proliferating these regulations, or should market forces play an important role? This is with regards to IDNs. He feels as to who should take the market or the government.
The tougher the questions are, I know who my friends are. So can you just repeat that? How this is related to IDNs? What approach should the government take?
Okay. So Anupam, would it be possible for you to come in? Anupam, are you online? If you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So I'm just repeating Anupam. Anupam is here. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Anupam, go ahead. Please ask the question.
Hi, Samiran, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay. So just on the context of IDN, do you see a role of government in proliferating it, or should it be left to the market forces to absorb the new IDN?
This is a real tricky one, and as I was saying earlier, I know my friends when they ask tricky questions to me. As ICANN, I don't have an opinion on that. Should a government support IDNs? It's really entirely up to governments to decide. But I think, and how much of it should be left to market forces, because even to support anything requires a vision and a strategy And some countries may have done it differently because they didn't have so many scripts to deal with. Some countries never used English on the internet, so they made sure that they had their IDNs up and ready very early for them to be able to use the internet. We are in a very unique space, particularly in India, where you have 22 official languages, you have 9 prominent scripts. I'm not saying and there are other scripts and there are other languages. So what role the government should play, I wouldn't venture into that space. I think from the ICANN perspective, what is very clear to us is that we should not be a barrier in helping people make that choice. We should be able to enable more people come online. And if that means making IDNs available anywhere in the world where there are enough people who would use it, we should be doing it. So that's the way we look at it. So I will not specifically comment on whether government should or should not support it.
Fair point, Simran. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we go to the Amazon?
One question, Samiran, before that, on popular request. I have this has been pinged to me personally. So I think some of the ISOC India Mumbai volunteers would like to know a bit about your journey to ICANN, as to
My journey to
how
ICANN. Okay.
Yes, and in future, if some of them want to pursue career opportunities in ICANN, how can what are they supposed to do? If you can just.
So let's start with the number 2, the career opportunities in ICANN. There are no secrets as to career opportunities at ICANN. They're usually all available on LinkedIn if something opens up, and we are very good at putting it out there and making sure that enough people know and have an opportunity to apply for it. Speaking of my journey, my journey with the internet started before there were browsers. So I'm talking about the late 1980s. I lived and worked in the United States, and from there, when I moved back to India, I actually helped in creating India's first sort of networked, IT networked newspaper called the Asian Age. And then subsequently, I was consulting to companies in the telecom or even the entertainment, telecom, and IT spaces. So I've always been on the periphery of this conversation of tech and policy, dipping in and out of it, and that's how I ended up at ICANN when they were looking for someone. I don't know if the story is good enough, but that's really what it is. So.
And can you tell a bit about, so sorry, this is a personal question here. Can you tell
Yes.
about, your love for piano, as well as a bit about an artist of yours who won the Grammy Award?
No. Actually, there's a bit of my tryst with information technology over there as well. I forgot to mention it. So between 2006 and 2010, I actually ran an internet radio station which promoted Indian artists globally. And it was called India Beat. And one of my artists, Debashish Bhattacharya, was actually nominated. He did not win, but in 2009 nominated for a Grammy in fusion music. If I wasn't doing this, what I do, I would have been a musician. So that's all I can say, because I've been into music from maybe age 4 or 5. So yeah.
Thank you, Samiran. I think that was very interesting. So I think now we can finally move to the last question, probably with regards to Amazon. Okay. Your perspective on Amazon.
So the story of Amazon is an intriguing one, because there are several nations, 8 or 9 nations around the in the Amazon region, and and all of this is documented how the company Amazon bid for the name .amazon in the first round of the new GTLD process. I think where this conversation is at this time is we were hoping, and we continue to hope, that those nations and Amazon can work out an understanding which both are satisfied with in terms of how best to use that name. There's, if you actually look at some of the news items from the last 3 months on Circle ID, on even BBC for that matter of fact, you will find a fair bit of, to and fro going on between those Amazon region countries, as well as Amazon the company. It's hard to say, or I don't want to, again, just the way I didn't want to say whether government should support IDNs or not as a matter of policy. It's very hard to say where this will land eventually. We're hoping that it lands in a place that everybody is satisfied with. But I'd like to use this example as one of the challenges of this multi-stakeholder system, and one of the benefits and challenges, because the multi-stakeholder system of creating policy, and particularly as we do for all things internet, nobody is 100% winner and nobody is 100% loser. Everybody needs to collaborate to come out with something that works for everyone. And we are just hoping that those nations involved there and Amazon, the company, can find that middle ground and and end this saga which has been going on for the last few years. So Pratik, I'm sure my answer has not satisfied you, but
no, I'm very satisfied with your answer. So
that's the most I'm going to talk about it. So
no problem, no problem. I don't think we have any other specific questions as of now. So what we would like to do is we would like to thank you, Samiran, for taking time out and coming on the Saturday talk. I would, on behalf of ISOC India Mumbai, I'll also like to thank Subhashish, other chapter leaders, as well as a lot of our participants who have attended this call. And the next steps for this is we will obviously come up with a report on what has been discussed in this online webinar, and this report would be circulated to all of you. If you have any comments or questions, you can always feel free to reach out at ISOC India Mumbai. We have mentioned our contact ID of chapter leaders at isocindiamumbai.org. Alternatively, if you want to reach out to Samiran, you can obviously directly reach out to Samiran, or even if you have any questions for him, we can also route your questions or comments to him. But thanks a lot to all of you for your time on a Saturday morning. We had a good attendance on Zoom. In fact, a few of our members had to be dropped out of the Zoom call, just to make sure that the bandwidth is being maintained. And we look forward to organizing such sessions in the future. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you, Pratik, and thank you for having me today. It's been a delight being and interacting with some of the questions. And as Pratik said, I'm always available offline as well. Please feel free to connect with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Samiran. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pratik, and all the India Mumbai chapter members.
Welcome. Thank you.